So, every time I come in and sit down with you, I say, well, I've got about 3 hours worth of material that I'm going to cover in 90 minutes. I've got about like a half day workshop that we're going to cover in 90 minutes. Okay, right? So today, this is my 8-week astrology course. And I'm going to cover it with you in 90 minutes. So there will be no talking. There will be no questions. There will be just sitting and listening to me download the information. And that's not entirely true. But so I'll give you a chance. I'll stop a couple spots that are good spots to stop and kind of let you ask some questions. And also my plan is to plow through it fairly quickly so that we can have some questions at the end. I really, the thing with astrology is that it is there's a lot of moving pieces, and just to get you the basic, like I said, oh, I'll give you some tips on how to work with your chart, and I was like, what am I going to tell them? It's just like, I can't just say, well, here's your sun, moon, and ascendant, see you next week. I guess I could have done that, but I mean, that's what normal people would have done, but that's not how I work. I'm like, I have to explain it all to you. If I can't explain it all, then I haven't really served you in my best capacity. Okay, so here we are for the Greater Seattle Tarot Meetup, and we are looking at how to read your astrology chart. And like I was just saying, I have a special way of teaching astrology that I developed kind of as a newbie that didn't really know what I was doing. But I had somebody begging me to teach them astrology. I'm like, I just learned it myself. I don't even know what I'm doing. And she's like, I don't care. I want to learn from you. And I'm like, but you've already studied astrology. You already know it. She's like, no, I need to know what you know. And I'm like, I can't imagine that I know anything. She's like, I will get you a place to have a class. I will get you students to have in your class. She arranged everything. To this day, I don't understand why. But that was in 2010. So I've been teaching astrology for 10 years now. And this is what I developed. And this is why, I think this is probably why she wanted to learn from me, because I look at it very differently than other people look at astrology. I actually had not been that interested in astrology up until I had to learn it in order to teach the tarot correspondences to it. So I had to understand what the astrology meant. That's why I learned it, to lead for the meetup group that I was leading, which was the Denver Tarot Geeks. And this is a system that I came up. And it's 17 symbols that unlock the secrets of the stars. And basically, this is a workbook on how to read your astrology chart. Here's a table of contents. It looks long, but that's because there's just basically one page on each of these things. And so astrology, what makes you tick? And the thing with most people is that astrology chart looks overwhelming. It seems like there's too much. And how do you break it down? Where do you start? And you go to some website, it tells you what Aries means or what Taurus means or Gemini, but that still doesn't equal you, and it still doesn't sound right. It still doesn't really capture what you're all about, and that's what astrology is supposed to do. And so we're gonna look at the gears. Instead of looking at the surface of astrology, we're gonna break it down and look at the gears, and that's what's gonna really bring this all together for you. So we've got the big sky of astrology. Astrology is huge. And don't try to learn everything. I know people that have been studying astrology for 30 years and will say, oh, I don't think I'm ready to read for another person yet. I've only been studying for 30 years. And it's like, I've been studying for like maybe less than 2 years when I taught my first class. This is my embarrassment, but hey, what can I say? I'm a good teacher. Sometimes when you're good at teaching something, even when you're brand new to it, you can teach it well. So I just tell people, just jump in. You'll never learn it all. There's too much. Just jump in and start working with it. Start looking at your chart, looking at other people's charts, your friends, your family. Look at celebrity charts, or you know, high profile people that you're familiar with their life story. Look at other people's charts, practice, look at your own chart. And practice. It is very rewarding to learn even the basics. So that's where we're going to start. Of course, where should you start? Well, it depends on what you ask. And that's one of them, that's true with tarot, and it's also true with astrology. Astrology can do a lot of different things. So it's really, the question is, what do you want to know? And that's where we're going to start. And I always like to take a more personalized approach to things. So if you want to know about, you know, relationships, let's just start there. If you want to, but in terms of what we're going to learn today, and this is these are things astrology can tell us. It can tell us about ourselves, our personality, the way we navigate the world we live in, as well as our inner planes. It shows us our challenges and strengths. It describes different areas of life and reflects back to us how we manage each of those areas. It shows us the cycles that are important for us, what's affecting us now or in the future. It lets us know what parts of ourselves will be activated, when, and for how long. It also illustrates how we interact with others. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more that astrology can do. But I only have less than 90 minutes because we started 10 minutes late. So what we're going to start with is the most basic use of astrology in modern astrology, which is to understand yourself. Who am I? So astrology is a symbolic language that reveals who we are, where we're going, and what we'll meet along the way. Its permutations are infinite, but it all starts with the most basic of building blocks. And these 17 things are the gears that we're going to look at today. There's unity, which is one. So there's one unity. There's two polarities. There are 3 different modes, 4 different elements, and 7 different planets. So 7 plus 4 plus 3 plus 2 plus 1 is 17. These 17 symbols tell you everything you need to know about astrology. And I illustrated them here with some tarot cards. And so let's see if I can show this. So this is a world card. Some of these are from a couple different Minchiate decks and a Montaigne Tarocchi. The world represented the unity. The moon and sun represent night and day, which are polarity. For the 3 modes, which show us how we start, maintain, and finish things, I chose the cards for adolescence, adulthood or virility, and old age. The 4 elements, fire, air, water, and earth. And then we've got our 7 planets. Let me see. There we go. That's the right size. Okay. And so here's the 7 planets: the moon, Mercury, Venus, the sun, Mars, Jupiter, and Saturn. I do work with the outer planets. I'm not going to teach them. They're considered to be higher octaves of the other planets. Also, the outer planets are generational, so they affect everybody within a certain age group. They're important, and they can show if they're significant in their chart. They can definitely show how you really uh, connect into or kind of locked into a certain zeitgeist for a generation. But they but for the most basic place to start, they're not as important. I do teach them in the 8-week course, but we're not going to touch on them today. And so unity. So unity is one. You have one chart and it describes one person. And if you're like me, you're a bunch of complications and contradictions. And that's the way life is. And so when we look at the chart, we want it to be simple and straightforward, but it's not. It reflects us. And so the chart is complications and contradictions. But that's cool because that's what we are. And one of the things that we forget when we look at a chart and get confused by it is that we forget that the chart's just as complicated as we are. And so digging into the complications, working on the contradictions, that will get you further than anything else that you can do in terms of astrology. Remember that everything resolves into one. When we break apart, especially if you're doing kind of that cookbook astrology where you just look up your sun and the sun sign, and then you look up your moon and your moon sign, and then you might look up, whatever, Mars or Venus or something, and it just is a bunch of building blocks that aren't making any shape. We're trying to find the unity of everything, and that's what's going to really allow astrology to come together for you. Polarity is the contradictions. And the main contradiction is night and day. It's the moon and the sun. And so the day and night are expressed via the ascendant and descendant line. That splits the chart into daytime above and nighttime below. The ascendant and descendant line is the horizon. Anything, if you were to go out at the very moment, the ascendant marks the moment. It is the hour marker. It marks the moment that you were born. If somebody were standing outside at the moment you were born, they could, if it were daytime, which it is, the sun is right here above the horizon, then they wouldn't be able to see these other planets. They might be able to see the moon. It's too bright to see that. But if it were nighttime and this was the moon here and the sun was down here, then all these stars would be visible. And even if you can't see these things because the sun is too bright, the sun kind of dominates a little bit. Even if you can't see these other things, they're above the horizon in the light. And that's what's important about the daytime aspect. The nighttime aspect is all the things that are below the horizon. So they're the things that are hidden from us. During the day, we wouldn't have any kind of access to them, even with any kind of telescope or anything. They're just not, they're not where we can see them. They're hidden away somewhere. And so when you're looking at a chart, that's the first thing you want to do is look at that polarity. What's above the horizon, what's below? If your sun is above the horizon, you have a day chart. If the sun is below the horizon, you have a night chart. If you have a day chart, the sun is the most important planet. If you have a night chart, the moon is the most important planet. Makes sense. One of the things that you can do when you first look at your chart is note how many planets are above the horizon and how many are below. This chart right here is set for the day and time of this class starting. So it's set for today at 9:30 Pacific time. And so you can see, of course, that's a daytime. The sun is out at 9:30 a.m. on the West Coast. It was out much, much, much earlier than that. You can see that there's a lot of planets that are above the horizon. 1, 2, that's a north node. We're not going to worry about it now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 planets above the horizon. There's only these 3 that are below. And it doesn't matter if you know what those planets are or not. This is the sun. That's important. And this one's the moon. The curvy crescent one is the moon, and the round one is the sun. I think most people know that part, but if not, that's all we're going to worry about at this time. Just count how many are above and how many are below. What is above we've got a lot more above than we have below. Having more planets above the horizon says that things are visible. They're made conscious. They are exterior. So this class, because this is the chart of this class starting, this class is about making things visible. And sure enough, that's expressed in its very chart. What's hidden? Not that much is hidden. There's some planets down here, but most things are made visible. And there's just a little bit that is not visible. The chart also divides into the left and the right. And so that is the MC-IC axis. The MC is the midheaven. It's the noon. When the sun is at noon, at high noon, it's the high noon point in the chart. It's whatever is at the highest point in the sky. That's the midheaven. The IC, which means imam chele, or bottom of the sky, the IC marks the midnight point, when whatever's the lowest in the sky. If your sun were actually here, now if you had to pull a noon chart because you don't know the time of your birth, the sun is much more likely to be somewhere either right on the midheaven or close to it, depending on daylight savings time and stuff. And so if your sun is really close to this, the very first thing you always ask is, did I pull a noon chart, or is this a properly timed chart? But any planet that's up here is going to be at the highest point in the sky, and that's at fullest visibility. Anything down here is in the darkest, the midnight portion. Where are you during the day? Unless you're a night owl, around noon, you're probably, even if you are a night owl, by high noon, you're probably up and about. At midnight, now if you're a night owl at midnight, you very well might be up and about, and that might be expressed by having a lot of planets below the horizon. But for the average person, the midnight time is you safe, tucked away safe in your bed. And so that's the most private part of our time, is down here. And this is the most public part of our lives up here. We associate the midheaven with career because it's the public part of ourselves. We associate the IC with home because it's the most private part of ourselves. But that's just one of the polarities, is left and right. The things on the left are ascending, they are coming into being. The things on the right are descending. They are transitioning out and moving away into the next thing that will come into being. Check out this chart. What do we have? Most of the majority of the planets, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 planets, are on the right-hand side. Only 3 planets, plus that north node that we're not counting, only those 3 planets are on the left-hand side. So this class is mostly about transitioning away. That makes perfect sense. I've been teaching this class for 10 years in exactly the same format. This week, I changed that format into this workbook. This workbook did not exist for previous iterations of this class. And so this class, this session that I'm doing with you right now, is all about me transitioning my teaching that I've done for 10 years and transitioning it into something new. That makes total sense. The next thing we look at are the modes. And there are 3 modes. Now, I'm sure you've seen that little thing, the little skit or sketch in Sesame Street. It's got Emmy Lou in it, and she meets up with beginning and end, and they're going to tell her a story. And the beginning is, once upon a time there was a beautiful princess, and the end was, and they lived happily ever after. And Betty Lou's like, that's the lousy story. Where's the rest of it? And they're like, oh, you want more than that? Okay, well, you need middle. Middle has to come. He makes the story interesting, and he tells about the dragon and all the quests that they have to go on, and all the stuff is in the middle. And so that's the 3 modes. The cardinal mode is the beginning. It kicks things off. The fixed mode is the middle. Fixed wants to hold everything in place. It also wants it to go on as long as possible. And so it won't leave. It will hold on to something. It will go through all the ups and downs and all the drama in order to keep going. Fixed only goal is to endure. And eventually the mutable mode finally gets in there and transitions out of that hold that fixed had on everything, and transitions out of that, ends it, so that cardinal can come in and start the next thing. Modes tell you cardinal, how you jump in, fixed, how you hold tight, and mutable, how you let go. And so on the chart, I'm going to show you a full chart so that you can see it. Here's a full chart. So when you've got your chart from astro.com, over here, there's this little table that says CFM, cardinal, fixed, mutable, at the top. We're going to look at that little table right now, and I don't think the other Astro.com has their charts like that. The other ones don't. Okay, so that little table, I cut it out and put it right here. So using that CFM, again, we don't have to know anything. All we're doing is counting still. Cardinal, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 things under cardinal. Fixed, 2 things. Mutable, again, we're not going to count that little north node thing. There's 3 things under mutable. This includes our polarities, our ascendant, and our midheaven. We're just not going to worry about the north node for now. And so now that we've looked at that, are we evenly split between cardinal, fixed, or mutable? No, we're not. We've got a whole lot of cardinal in this chart. We've got very little fixed and a little bit more mutable. So do you have more help starting, maintaining, or finishing? Well, in this chart, we have more help starting. We're really good at getting things started, and that's true for me personally. And this class, we're going to start a lot of stuff that we're not going to have time to finish. So what weaknesses show up? The fixed position. What we don't have access to right now is how to maintain this. This class is going to need help with that. Well, what planets can help you with beginning, holding, or ending? If we need help holding, where would I go? I would go to Uranus or the midheaven. And so I would look for that glyph in the chart and see what is it showing me, how can it help me maintain this. And of course the midheaven is there as well, which means that if that planet in the midheaven are in the same sign, chances are we're looking at the midheaven being out and about. It's about being visible. One thing that would help hold this or maintain this is visibility. So the 4 elements: fire sparks, air lifts, water flows, and earth supports. The 4 classical elements are not so much the flames, wind, sea, and land. Rather, they are the ideas that underlie these things, their essence. The four elements are the abstract ingredients that mix to form everything. Fire gives warmth, light, and energy. Air offers buoyancy, cheer, and levity. Water rises and recedes, mixes and dissolves. Earth solidifies, structures, and completes. These qualities blend in various proportions in the chart, describing our inherent nature. The four elements show your layers, from light and bright down to your deepest gravitas. And these are in the Aristotelian order of the elements, in which fire is the lightest and highest. Air kind of fills in everything equally. Water sinks, and earth is the solidity that supports everything. And that's expressed in this chart, that fire and air move upwards, water and earth move downwards. And we use these terms, these qualities, to describe them. Fire is hot, dry, and expansive. It rises and expands. It's our energy. Air is hot, wet, and expansive. The wetness, the moisture weighs it down a little bit. So it expands, but not just up. It expands in all directions. Water is cold, wet, and contractive. It pools or follows an existing channel. It represents our fluidity. Earth is cold, dry, and contractive. It sinks and contracts. It's our stability. And these are very traditional from the Western esoteric tradition, from alchemy. These are very traditional ways of looking at the elements. So now we're going to look at the cross of the elements. Fire, hot and dry. Earth, dry and cold. Water, cold and wet. Air, wet and hot. So what's really interesting is that we see that the four elements arise from the interaction of two polarities. There is the hot and cold polarity, and there's the dry and wet polarity. And from the interaction of two polarities, we get the four elements. So the elements exercise is now looking at that same table on your chart. On the left-hand side, it says FAEW for fire, air, earth, and water. You're going to notice that in this chart, there's only two fire. Not counting this one, there's only one planet that is in air. There's a whole lot of earth, and there's an okay representation of water. So this chart that we're looking at is a very earthy chart. Now, interestingly, this is a contradiction. We saw before that there wasn't a lot of fixed in the chart. It didn't have that sense of holding or maintaining, but there is an abundance of earth in that chart. And so that earth is another way of holding, maintaining, and offering up a way of supporting and enduring. And so we've seen an interesting contradiction already. And these are the things that you really want to look for, because this helps out the fact that there's not a lot of fixed in the chart. The fact that all of that earth energy, which is stable, it's safe, it's practical, all of that energy is going to come in. And hopefully that's how I make this class, that I make it safe. I give you a strong foundation from which you can grow. And the growth itself is all the cardinal stuff coming into being, all the mutable stuff coming out of being. That's the growth. It's like parts of you rise up, other parts fall away, and there's a cycle, and there's a sense of transition and all of that kind of stuff. And so, and we've got some more words here. Fire is energy, will, and desire. Earth, stable, safe, practical. Water, fluidity, feelings, and dreams. Air, adaptability, words, and reason. Again, I hope you went ahead and grabbed that chart off the this workbook off the internet, because I know I'm going really fast, and you might not you might not be able to remember all those words that I'm saying. So let's go on to the planets. There are 7 traditional planets, and these are what we call the 7 visible planets. It's actually the 2 luminaries, which are the sun and moon, plus what we moderns would call planets, the 5 visible planets that we can see. And so the 7 classical planets. The planets are the different parts of us. They define how we think, feel, love, and fight. They show us how we step up and what holds us back. They indicate our core self and all the layers that mask, drape, decorate, accessorize, and support it. They are the stock characters whose dramatic interactions flesh out our unique personality. The 7 planets are the characters that you play in life. You have the part of you that is yourself, that's the sun. You have the part of you that is emotional, that's your moon. You have the part of you that's communicative, that's Mercury. You have the part of you that loves, that's Venus. You have the part of you that fights, that's Mars. You have the part of you that leads, that's Jupiter. And you have the part of you that digs in its heels, that tries to end things, that tries to set the rules and the boundaries, that's Saturn. We all have all these parts, but everybody expresses those parts differently. So here's our dramatis personae. And so we've got the image, we've got the planet, what part of you it represents, some of its most basic qualities, and an archetype to look at. And so I basically went over each of those things. The moon is the emotions, Mercury is the mind, Venus is our pleasure and love, the sun is the self, it's the hero, the protagonist, the main character, it's everyman. Mars is the passion and spirit, Jupiter is our expansion and growth, Saturn is our strictness and limitations. So those are the 17 symbols. And I did that in about half an hour. So now we're going to look at some keywords and look at some more examples and chart exercises. Here are the basic keywords for the 17 symbols. I tried to make a list of keywords for you because I do think it can be useful to, when you get stuck with something, it is useful to go and look at a list of keywords. But I actually recommend that to start, you use fewer rather than more keywords. Try to narrow everything down to basic components, and then see that as like Venus is love. But it's not only about love, it's about pleasure, it's about aesthetics, what we find beautiful. It's about creating harmony between things. And so Venus is love, that's the first place to start. But when you think of love, also remember all the things that make up love. It's about bringing things together, whether it's people, it's getting together owning something that you love, finding the thing that's the most beautiful, having a beautiful experience. Those are all under the category of Venus. And so all you need to know is that Venus is about love, but remember all the things that make up that quality. Same with Mars. Mars is about anger, aggression. Well, Mars is the warrior. So you've got your quality of the warrior. What all makes that? What are all the components that make up that quality within yourself? And so on and so forth. So there's kind of more basic, I think in some of the earlier pages, I give you more simplistic ways of looking at these things. With the keywords, I tried to expand on that. I recommend starting with the simplistic. Okay, so the signs. So this is, of course, most people that hear how I teach are like, what? You don't teach the signs? How do you get 17 symbols? There's 12 signs, and what other 5 symbols do you teach? I'm like, I don't teach the signs. I don't teach the signs. I don't teach the houses. Everybody's like, ah! So anyway, the signs, How you understand the signs is that they're made up of one polarity, one mode, one element, and one planet. These are the building blocks. They make up everything. So don't go looking up what Aries means on the internet. Figure it out. It is yang polarity. It is the active polarity, the daytime polarity. It is the cardinal mode. It likes to start things. Its element is fire. Fire is that bright light, high, like elevated, rising energy. It's ruled by the planet Mars, the warrior. All of that, you put all that together, you add the title, the ram, take a look at the little glyph. What does that look like to you? Well, it looks like a ram, but meditate on that. What else does it look like? It looks like a furrow in a plowed field, like the ground, the earth coming up where the furrow has been plowed, where you plant seeds. Aries is the spring. It's about growth. All of those things, you put all that stuff together and you understand what Aries is. Same with Taurus. This is yin. It's the nighttime. It's the receptive. Its mode, I should leave this here so you can see that. Its mode is fixed. It holds and maintains. Its element is earth. Also that strong, stable, practical. So it holds and maintains, and it's stable and practical. That's going to be really grounded. Its planet is Venus, the goddess of love. What does Taurus like? All of those things that go under the category of Venus, of love, things that are pleasurable, things that are enjoyable, things that feel good. Those are all things that make up Taurus. Its title is the bull, and that's big and heavy and strong. And cattle, if you want to get into symbolism, cattle was considered a movable wealth in the old times. And so, and I'm not going to get into it, but it is actually a symbol of wealth, and Taurus is considered to have more of a sense of luxury to it. And so on and so forth throughout all the signs. And so we're going to need this later on, because we're going to have to be able to identify and remember what polarity, what mode, what element, and what planet are associated with each sign. So here's our chart exercise number 1, sun, moon, and ascendant. And when you're learning your chart, this is really the first place. Those other things that I said are the first place to start. Look at your polarities. Look at the top and bottom. Look at the left and right. Look at the 4 elements. See what's strong. But then once you're getting into looking at some planets, we're going to start with the sun and moon. Now, the planet is the role. Remember, it was the character. The sign is the setting. So if you go see a play, at the start of the play, the king might be on his throne in the castle. That's where he's at home. The king is powerful there. He likes being on his throne. He feels in charge. Later on in the play, the king might be outside in a storm. He's still the king, so his character hasn't changed, only the setting has changed. So that character could be in any of the 12 different settings in the chart. The signs are the settings. How does being in a different setting affect him? If that king is out in a storm, and he's not even wearing his crown, he's dressed in his nightgown, it's at night. Normally the king likes to be during the daytime. He likes everybody to look at him. He likes to be up on his throne and give orders. But now it's nighttime, the king's in his nightgown. He's out on the plains, and the storm is whipping up something furious, but he's a king. What does he do? He says, "Stop it, storm, stop blowing." Does the storm stop? No, it's not subject to him. He's powerless. He still acts like a king, but he doesn't have the power he normally has. How does he respond to his environment? That planet is a part of you. The sign is the environment, and it affects how your planet acts, how that part of you acts. So you're going to look at your sun. We're in the sign of Cancer right now. This again is a chart for today, July 11th, 2020, Burien, Washington, 9:30 a.m. The sun is in Cancer. And so what do we know about Cancer? Well, Cancer's polarity is yin, so it's the receptive quality, it's the nighttime quality. Its mode is cardinal, it likes to start things. Element is water, that's the emotions. And its planet is the moon, which is also the emotions. The crab is its symbol, and that crab is he's got the hard shell that protects him. Also look at the glyph. This glyph is supposed to look like two eggs in a nest. Cancer is the nest. It's the archetype is the mother. It wants to hold, well, the moon's archetype is the mother, and the moon wants to nurture things and take those little eggs in that nest and help them grow. And so this chart is saying that the sun, which is the hero of our play, is in an environment that feels very nurturing and that is emotional, water and the moon. But it still wants to start things because it's cardinal. So it wants to start the emotional connections. It wants to start the nurturing. And so that's what we're doing. We're trying to nurture you and get in, and this class is designed to kind of hold your hand and get you emotionally connected into your chart, rather than having it break down into all those mental jigsaw puzzle pieces that are too hard to put together. The moon is the soul. The moon is our emotions, our private self. What sign is that in? Well, look right over here. Here's the moon, that crescent. It's in Aries. And so we go back. What is Aries? Remember, Yang, cardinal fire, Mars, the ram. Well, that's very interesting because we said that the sun's role, the sun is in the environment. It's in the setting of nurturing and emotions. And what do the emotions do? The emotions are like, I'm excited now. I want to start something. I have a lot of energy. I want to fight astrology until I understand it. I want to really do this work. I want to be active. And so by stimulating the emotions here, we get them activated and riled up. And look at what's true here is that moon is right next to Mars. Mars is the warrior. And so the emotions, not only are they in the warrior sign, they're right next to the warrior. So they have extra boost of help from the warrior. Okay, where am I? So now the ascendant is the mask. The ascendant is how others see us, their first impression of us. Now, the ascendant is a point. Ascendant, descendant, midheaven, IC, those are points on the chart. And so it's not so much the character that the planet is, it is that marking the point where things rise. And so that point is in Virgo. We take a look at Virgo. It's yin, it's mutable, it transitions, it's earth, it's solid, it's Mercury, the mind, and its symbol is the Virgin. And so putting all this together, the ascendant is your people's first impression of you, and you're bringing, because it's not a character, you're really bringing this entire setting, this environment with you whenever you're out meeting things, meeting people. And so what environment are we bringing? Break it down. it's the mind. We do need that analysis. We don't want to focus on it. It's not the most important thing, but we're still going to break it down. What are we going to do? We're going to break it down into 17 symbols. Boom. So here's the signs exercise for you. And this is something, again, from my class. Here's the sign Aries. Here's the glyph. Here's the polarity, the mode, the element, the planet, the title. Meditate on that. How do these different parts work together as a team? What is that team? Yang, which is the sun, the daytime, traditionally they used to call it masculine energy, and we don't say that anymore. It's not kosher anymore, but that directive and active energy, that's the yang energy. The cardinal, it's getting things started. Fire was that fast and furious, and Mars is the warrior. That team of people, they're really going to be acting all the time and working all the time. They're going to have a lot of energy and never get tired. What if we look at another let's look at a yin. Scorpio is yin. It's fixed, so it holds on. It's water, which is emotional, but it's ruled by Mars. That's a very interesting team to have together. That team is it's yin and it's fixed, so it's going to want to slow down. The water needs to feel everything, and Mars wants to get it done. And so how are we going to fit all that together? How would you describe that team as they work together? So that's your job, and then whatever you come up with, go ahead and jot your keywords in. I think I gave you, if you write small, I gave you plenty of room to write all your keywords in there. So that was exercise. I don't know what exercise that was. That was the signs exercise. Okay, moving on. So now we have chart exercise 2, the ascendant, ruler of the ascendant, and the midheaven. So we already noted the ascendant. We saw that it was Virgo. The setting that we bring forward when people first meet us, this class is first met, feels like it's logical. The title of it is 17 symbols. I'm going to break this down for you. That's what comes out in the beginning. So what we want to know is what planet rules that sign. And so we go back to the signs handout and we look at Virgo right here. Ruling planet is Mercury. So now, where am I? So now we're going to note what planet rules the ascendant. That planet, which we said is Mercury ruling Virgo, is the chart ruler. It's the conductor of the group, of the whole chart. Its qualities influence how all the planets perform. It's the one who guides the chart. So where is Mercury? We want to look through here. Oh, look, here's Mercury right here. Well, first of all, he's retrograde because I had couldn't get the workbook uploaded to my website. Thanks, Mercury retrograde. But he's here in Cancer. So it's about a Mercury who wants to slow down because he's retrograde. I didn't promise to talk. I didn't include retrograde in the workbook, but we'll have to mention it anyway since one of our planets is. So he's retrograde, he slows down, he's looking back, he's looking to the past, he's revisiting. What am I revisiting? This class is revisiting material I've previously taught. That makes total sense. But he's also guiding the entire chart. And so he's an emotional Mercury because he was in that watery yin cardinal moon ruled sign of Cancer. So he's an emotional Mercury. And so he wants to look back at what are the things that get you emotionally engaged with your chart. One of the things, and I don't really talk about this in this class, maybe I shouldn't talk about it now, but I used to, when I first learned that, I didn't learn anything, I just made it up as I went along. And one of the things that I first did was I would find myths in the chart. And I had and I can show you, actually a whole talk on not on that by itself, but I do a talk where I kind of explore that in a little more detail. But I would find myths in the chart. You know, what's the story? Mercury, an emotional Mercury doesn't want to just be logical about it. He wants to find the heart. He wants to find the emotional connection. So he's guiding all those planets saying, you know what, everybody, yes, we're going to have to have some analytical qualities, but we also want to remember things. We also want to connect with our emotions. One way of looking at this is that the ascendant is the ship, the ruler of the ascendant, Mercury, is the rudder, and the midheaven is the destination. That was the high noon point, the midheaven, that's your destination. So you could say that the ascendant is the type of vehicle you're in, the ruler of the ascendant is how you drive it, and the midheaven is where you're going. So the ascendant is Virgo, and Virgo was yin, it's earth, it's mutable, it's ruled by Mercury. Virgo is earth, it's practical. As mutable, it's still adaptable. And so we want to kind of put those things together. It kind of does, you know, I'm thinking public transportation, doesn't matter. I can adapt to anything. So we're doing public transportation, and the chart ruler is how you drive. The ruler of the ascendant is how you drive. What is this? How does a character and setting describe it? Well, Mercury is the mind, but its setting is in that place that is more nurturing and emotional. And so this bus is being driven by this ability to communicate on an emotional level. Communicate, which is Mercury, and the emotional level, which is the setting. And so that's how the bus is driven. It's not from somebody, you know, so if somebody gets on, they're like, I don't have my money with me. You know, how is Mercury in Cancer going to respond to that? Come on, that's fine. We'll deal with it. Pay twice the next time. It's still logical. Pay twice the next time. That's that's the driver of that bus. And so the midheaven, your destination, and that midheaven is over here in Taurus, and that was fixed earth. It's yin, fixed earth, and it's ruled by Venus. It's the bull. So where are we going? We're trying to get to some place that's, remember we said we don't have a lot of fixed in the chart. That midheaven was one of the only fixed things, but it's our destination. So that we're trying to drive that bus full of all these people with that tender-hearted bus driver towards something that is maintained. And so that's going to be that ability to one, I'm hoping that this workbook is something that you can come back to over and over again. But two, just to have that sense of being able to use astrology throughout your life, to always be able to refer to astrology, that this isn't a fad for you, that you're going to want to hold on to this for as long as possible. And so that's where this class is going. It's trying to go to some place where it holds on to that and maintains that. The aspects, where are we at? 1034. So the aspects, and this hopefully will put everything in perspective for you and really get this easy. The conjunction, it's ruled by the sun. The aspects are ruled by planets. Once we know the planet that rules the aspect, all of our understanding of that character, all of our planetary keywords now apply to that aspect. The conjunction is ruled by the sun. It is identity or equation. It's two things that are identical. The sextile, and I forgot to put the degrees in, the sextile is 60 degrees, conjunction is 0 degrees, usually plus or minus a few. Sextile is ruled by Venus, so it's friendly and harmonious. The square, which is 90 degrees, that's ruled by Mars. The square is antagonistic, competitive. The trine is ruled by Jupiter. It's expansive and generous. The trine is 120 degrees. The opposition is 180. 180 opposite, pulling in different directions, pulling away, denying. It's ruled by Saturn that says no to things. The other thing we want to look at is aspect patterns. This is a grand trine. It activates the same element. You'll notice that when things are 120 degrees away, they usually are going to be in the same element. This is not 100% true, but this is the essence of what the trine is about, activating those similar elements. The Grand Cross, which is a square, it's going to get all of the same mode. And so a Grand Cross will be a fixed Grand Cross, or a mutable Grand Cross, cardinal Grand Cross. And then the Grand Sextile is going to get all of the same polarity. It'll activate all the yin or all of the yang. This one is pretty unusual to see. These two are a little more common. The kite is a grand sextile plus a or a grand trine plus a bisextile, which is 2 sextiles and a trine. So you can see that it forms a kite shape. T-square is 2 squares and an opposition. Here's the 2 squares. There's the opposition. And you can just look at grand trine as a kite figure is a trine plus bisextile, sextile and trine. Sextile is ruled by Venus, trine is ruled by Jupiter. That's a really easygoing configuration. T-square, 2 squares and an opposition, or the Grand Cross, which is 4 squares and 2 oppositions. Squares are Mars, oppositions are Saturn. Mars is the warrior. Saturn says no to things. Those ones are going to be a lot more difficult. They're going to bring in more challenges. Now, challenges are a way of saying growth, if you want to put the nice spin on it. And if you want to, and for the easy ones, the kite and the grand trine, if you want to look at the shadow side of it, those can be lazy. It's too easy, and so they don't think there's anything worthwhile there, and they don't grow. They tend to kind of slack. And so it depends on how you use it and what you do. The kite is better at kind of grounding. The grand trine can kind of spin in place. The kite kind of grounds it a little bit, so that can be useful. And here's this rectangle, which is 2 trines, 2 sextiles, 2 oppositions. It links, you can see we've got Aries and Aquarius, we've got Leo and Libra. It links polarities, is basically what it's linking. It's just not the grand sextile that links all the polarities. This just links some of the polarities, and it's missing those 2. So, okay, aspect exercise. This is one of the real keys to understanding the chart. A lot of people say that they've studied their chart for years, but they don't know the aspects. If you don't know the aspects, you haven't studied your chart, and that's just my way of thinking. But I think this is the thing that'll take it over the top. You cannot understand the planets by themselves. You cannot cut the chart apart and understand it. You have to look at it holistically. And the thing that ties everything together are the aspects. This to me is the most important part. The aspects connect two planets or points in a chart. So you can see here that this one is an opposition. It's 180 degrees. It goes from one sign to the opposite sign. And that's the sun being opposite these planets down here. Really all three of them, but this one's still in, Saturn's still in Aquarius, so it's kind of, nope, it hasn't, it's not, I'm sorry, it's moved in, it's at 29 degrees Capricorn. So all three of these are in Capricorn right now, and the sun is opposite to, whoops, that. And so that's an aspect. That is one planet in one position, 180 degrees opposite to three planets that are occupying pretty much the same position in Capricorn, give or take a few degrees. Here's another one. The sun is trine, that's the 120 degrees, over here to Neptune in Pisces. And so that is one planet in one position related to another planet. It's just relating those two positions. I gave you up here, I gave you the little glyphs that show you what the aspects are. If you don't know these, you can come down here, and let me make this bigger for you. And all those little squares, you can see if you're not sure what the relationship is. So I said, okay, the sun and Neptune, what is that? It's the triangle. So it's the trine. That little symbol is in that chart. So you can figure them out from here. Mercury has that asterisk to Uranus. So that's the sextile. And those glyphs are in that aspects table, so you can find them and look them up. And so that's what we really want to do, is see how things relate to each other. So if the sun, let's say the sun is the self, the sun is the hero of the story, it's the protagonist. It's opposite to Jupiter. Jupiter is the leader. And so in this case, the self is in opposition to the leader. What does that mean? I don't know what it means. None of us do. So we think it through and say, well, what does that, why would that be? How can the self, what does it mean when the hero is in opposition to the leader? Well, one thing that comes to mind when I'm particularly, if I'm saying, well, this class, well, I teach this very differently from everybody else. So most astrology leaders might not be opposed to what I'm doing, but this class might be opposed or opposite, 180 different from how the leaders normally share this. So that might be how you would interpret that. The other thing that you might look at is that these red lines plus this blue line, the shorter blue line, which is a sextile, and the longer blue line, which is a trine, if we had one more planet, in fact, I don't think we can count the ascendant, it's too early on, but if we were able to draw one more sextile over to here, we'd have that rectangle. And so we're not going to count that as a rectangle, although I might, if that were my chart, I might pull up some of the asteroids and things and see if anything actually falls there, because that might be interesting to see if it makes if it turns this into a rectangle. Alternately, I might check transits. Whenever a transit moves through this part of the chart right here, it's going to activate this and turn it into a rectangle. And so the rectangle, we said, matches polarities. And these are going to be yin polarity. It's Cancer, which is yin, Pisces, which is yin, Capricorn, which is yin, and then our elusive fourth point of that rectangle, which would be Virgo, which is yin. And so the mystic, or the rectangle, it's also called a mystic rectangle, but then apparently some astrologers think that's stupid. I don't know where I learned it. I don't care. I like the word mystic, but I don't want to be too woo-woo. So the rectangle, or the mystic rectangle, I think the idea is that the people that say it's mystic give it all kinds of extra mystic properties that it didn't traditionally have. And so that rectangle matches up those polarities, and they're all the yin polarity. And so we're looking at I kind of think of that rectangle as a doorway. To me, it seems like a door. It opens a doorway into this yin quality. We can step through that doorway and end up in a very yin environment. If this were all shifted, and all of these things were over one, then we'd be connecting all the yang polarities, and that rectangle would be like a door that opens into a very yang environment. And so, you know, we take a look at our hero, our leader. We've got Neptune over here. It's considered to be a higher octave of Venus, although personally I have found that it really resonates a lot more with the moon, I think, than Venus. But there's that part of the leader. The Neptune is actually called the mystic. Stephen Forrest did a talk at NORWAC on Neptune as the mystic, and then the self. And so you've got the self, the mystic, the leader, all stepping into this very yin place. So that opposition, it's a yin opposition. That means it's not going to be as antagonistic as a yang opposition would be. It's much more, oh, I have a really different way of doing it. Cool, what's your way of doing it? Oh, this is how I like to do it. Oh, I do it this way. Okay, well, we're not going to agree. We're still going to do our own thing, but isn't it interesting to learn about it? You know, if it was a yang opposition, they'd probably fight with each other. I'm never going to talk to you again. I'm fine. Go your own way. I don't care. Okay, that's so this is, how much time do we have? We have 10 minutes. Here I am acting out the chart for you. And so the summary, here's the first steps of how to go through this chart. And this is just basically everything that I've talked about. Oh, I skipped the unity. There we go. I'm like, I missed something. So finding the unity in the chart, and this is the last thing. Now that we've taken the chart apart to see how it works, let's put it back together again. First thing you're going to look for is themes and repetitions. Rule of thumb is if you see 3 things that say the same thing, or something is said 3 different ways, that's going to be really important. We love those themes. But, and here's the thing, a lot of people just sweep the contradictions under the rug. They're like, well, we're not going to talk about that. That's confusing. Not a good plan. The contradictions are the deep truth in the chart. Most important thing. We don't want to just look for agreement. We want to know who the dissenters are and what they have to say. So find your contradictions. They will give you the most important information. Because both sides of the contradiction are true. It is unity. It is one chart. Even if those 2 characters don't want to talk to each other, they're still stuck in that same room for your whole life. And so you want to learn how to work with those contradictions. And those contradictions can show up in all kinds of different ways in the chart. So when you start to find things that contradict each other, that's when you want to really dig in. Don't figure out, well, this one's more important, so I'm going to go with this one. Find out how you can get them working together, how you can get them communicating, how you can activate. Maybe you have to alternate between them. Maybe there is another point somewhere in the chart that lets both of them come together, like that Neptune did in this chart. So this is a contradiction, but Neptune is a way of working with it. He's like a third party that lets you work with both of them. So integrate your contradictions. Integrate them, resolve them. Contradictions are fuzzy focus. Resolving them brings all of you into focus. And when you find that astrology isn't making sense for you, what you want to do is resolve and integrate your contradictions. And all of a sudden, you will find powerful truths about yourself. So here's a summary with all those different things mentioned. If you guys are interested, I'm going to take questions in just a minute here. If you guys are interested, I do have an intuitive astrology class that I teach. It's all of this material, but over the course of 8 weeks. And if we do it online, this basically is if there are enough people interested, I will run this. If not, that's okay. We'll do it another time. Over 8 weeks, we basically go through all of this plus a little bit more, and there's a lot of looking at charts. So we look at your chart, we look at celebrity charts, you can bring in charts of family or friends. We apply it, is what we do in the 8 weeks. I also have something that I've done. I did this years ago. It was an Empyrean Key monthly course. And we met once a month, and I have handouts and tarot spreads. It's a tarot and astrology process. And we looked at the transits for that month and looked at it in our chart and pulled tarot cards on it. And it was an amazing process. Most of the people stuck with me for the full year as we went through it all. And the thing is, if you have problems with your chart, if you've looked at your chart, if you've worked on your chart, and you find that there are difficulties that you haven't been able to figure out, this helps you do it. This helps remediate problems, propitiate annoying, frustrating gods that won't work with you, planetary gods. This is what you need, and it involves astrology, tarot, and ritual. This is my original system. I developed this back around probably around 2010-ish, the year before that, maybe, building up to it. It lets you translate insight into real changes in your life. Nothing else lets you do this the way this does. Discover your highest potential in your chart and create your own personal tools for transformation. This is really the best thing I teach. It's not for everybody. It's super hands-on, and it's very meditative, very introspective, and not everybody, some people they just don't process that way, and that's cool. But if you do process this way, this is your thing. So anyway, I'm thinking about starting up a monthly thing where I just kind of probably email things out, and probably be more like a, I don't know what it would be. We'd have to find out who's interested and put it together. But anyway, and that's me. So coming in, we've got 5 minutes left. Let's see what I can answer. That's to make us Scorpios complicated and interesting. Yeah, because there's all those contradictions in there. Does it make a difference what house these planets are in? Yeah, I don't talk about the houses because there are so many different house systems. I of course teach them in the 8-week course, but that's the first thing we do when I do teach them is show you all the different house systems. And I've been doing this back from the beginning, before there was quite the discussion. There's now a lot of controversy around house systems. I just noticed there was a lot of different ones back in the day, and just started teaching it to show people that your chart can really change based on which house system you use. And when something is wiggly, I don't like it. I want things to hold still. And so houses are wiggly. And so I don't really like, I work with them, absolutely, not to say that I don't, but I really want to stress that when I'm teaching students, that the houses are wiggly. And so you got to be able to be adaptable with them. You have to wiggle too, and kind of wiggle into this house. Does it fit here? Wiggle into that house. Does it fit better here? How does this one feel? How does that one feel? And find your best house system. What's more important are those 4 angles: the ascendant, descendant, midheaven, and IC, which was the rising, the setting, the high noon, and the midnight. Those are the most important. So the more you can place things in relationship to that, the better you'll be. Find the idea of the rising, the coming into being, and the setting. Those things will give you, in many ways, surprisingly, more information than the houses themselves will give. Oh my God, this is amazing. Yay. Aspects are confusing. I love Saturn. Yeah, me too. I'd love to take the 8-week class. Yay. Okay, so real live questions. You can unmute yourself and ask questions now.
Okay, I got a couple questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I was just going to say, if you have to, anybody that has to leave, I totally get it. We're coming up on 11 o'clock Pacific time, but I'm willing to stay for another 15-20 minutes and answer some questions. So go ahead.
So what's the difference between the red and the blue in the aspects when it's drawing the line? What's the difference between, why are they 2 different colors?
And that's such a good question. And this is one other reason that I absolutely adore the astro.com charts, is because they color code things. And not all the chart, a lot of people try to print their charts making it pretty. We don't want pretty, we want information. And astro.com color codes it. The red lines are the hard aspects. They're the square, which is ruled by Mars, and the opposition, which is ruled by Saturn. The blue lines are the easy aspects, and they're the sextile ruled by Venus and the trine ruled by Jupiter. There's also some green lines, which are minor aspects. In the way I teach, we only work with the major aspects. We don't bother with the minor ones. They're just not important enough. Stephen Forrest, that wrote The Inner Sky, says that, he said, in a 2 to 3 hour consultation, I can spend the entire time talking about the major aspects. There's no time to get to the minors. He's like, there's so much information in the major aspects. Don't worry about the other ones. But that's the red ones are the hard aspects, and the blue ones are the easy aspects.
Cool. So what are the dashes, like the dotted lines that kind of go? Are those like making rectangles? Is that what they're trying to do? Like with
the dotted lines might be some, I'd have to look, let me see, they might be some minor aspects.
Okay, yeah, so today's chart had some in there, so I was just curious about that.
Okay, yeah, they're minor aspects.
Okay. And then are the numbers in the middle of the chart, are those the representative of the houses?
Absolutely, yep.
Okay, all right, cool. And then my last question, because you pulled the chart up for today, how do you, so obviously you're putting the numbers in and where you are for today's chart. How do you associate a daily chart with your daily chart, like your
That's
world?
transits. What you want to do is go into astro.com, go to extended chart selection.
Yep.
And it's pretty busy, so it's hard to navigate. It's not hard to navigate, it's it's actually pretty cool. It's sometimes hard to find what you need because there's so much offered, but under I forget what it's called, if it's chart type or something, but there's one that says natal chart wheel, and then there's natal chart and transits. It's a big long list, so you have to scroll through a bunch of things, but natal chart and transits is the one that you want, and that'll give you your chart on the inside with the green transiting planets, today's planets around the outside, and you can change the date to pull the transits for any date that you want.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Question for you, Joy.
Yeah.
So I know you don't put a huge emphasis on the houses, but I'm wondering, when you do your chart on Astro or Solar Fire, whatever you have, which house system do you use? Do you use Placidus or use Coke, or
I use Coke. I always pull when I'm doing whenever I'm doing a session with somebody, I always pull the chart in Coke. But I mostly read whole sign houses. I like to pull the chart in Coke though, because I like to see if there's anything intercepted. I like to just note if there's a lot of the wiggle room, if a lot of the planets wiggle into other houses between whole signs and Coke, that tells me something. And if there's intercepted houses or intercepted signs, that's usually really useful to me in terms of explaining things. So I read whole sign houses, but I pull the chart in Coke so that I have that quadrant house system to compare it to.
Okay. I think every astrology teacher I've ever had has always used the Coke system, but I always use Placidus. Like when I just print my own chart on these free websites, I always use Placidus, I think because it literally moves like a couple of my planets into a house that just makes more sense to my personality. And then Coke like moves it up. So, or I just kind of rectify my time and I change my birth time by like 5 minutes. And then it puts the planets, I think, where they should be. I don't know, it's kind of complicated.
Well, and that's all you can do. I mean, like I said, it's wiggly, and so that's why I give it lower credibility. And you know, and every astrologer out there swears by the house system that they use, and some of them swear by Placidus, and some by Coke, and some by Regiomontanus, and whole signs, and so yeah, that's all you can do is first of all figure it out with your chart, and that was what happened with me. Coke moved the planets into the houses where they felt right. And so I started using Coke, and then working with clients, going back and forth between Placidus and Coke, same thing. The Coke seemed to address things more accurately, and then moving into whole signs, that seemed to work for most people. Every once in a while I had somebody that didn't work for, and I had to stick to the quadrant houses for them. I've got my explanations. I'm not going to go into them now, but that's basically the process you have to go through to figure it out, is do your chart and then start doing other people's charts and see, check out how those planets are wiggling and see what makes the most sense to you.
Yeah, it is interesting too, because all teachers, they always teach the planets, the signs, and then they immediately teach houses. But the way you do it actually makes more sense. You should learn the planets, the signs, and then the aspects, and then houses are just like, you know, I don't know, later, like whenever, like maybe the fourth thing that you kind of mentioned. But it's very interesting. And then, do you go over more in depth in your class also the nodes, like north and south?
Yeah, I do mention them, but I wouldn't say in depth. No, I mean, yeah, we mention them, but there's not a separate class on it.
Okay.
You know, relating this to tarot, where the minor cards are in the correspondence type decks are like a planet and a sign. These same kind of interpretations would apply as to the reason why the artist maybe chose the symbols and stuff to put on the card, I guess.
Oh, I'm sorry, say that again.
So if I take a tarot deck and the minors have like a planet in a
sign.
sign,
Yeah.
right? And so then you get things like, well, okay, so is that a happy thing to have that planet in the sign? Does that color the interpretation of the card as the artist?
Right. Yeah, and yes, the answer. I mean, I don't know if that's a question or just an observation, but yes, and those planets. I think that those planets do influence the card interpretation quite a bit, and I might have said this before in our Kabbalah class, but the more I've worked with the astrological interpretations of the cards and the more I've worked with the Kabbalistic interpretations of the cards, I think Pamela Coleman Smith was pulling from astrological interpretations when she designed her card images. And so I think that the astrology is the best fit for understanding the meaning of those minor arcana cards. One thing that you didn't say, that's what I was listening for. I'm like, I didn't want to tell you something if you already knew it, but those planets and signs, those planets rule the decan of the sign. So there's 36, there's if you take a full circle, which is 360 degrees, you divide it by 12, that's 30 degrees in each sign, then those 30-degree signs are subdivided into 10-degree portions, 10-degree segments.
Right.
And those are the decans. Each decan is ruled by a planet, and the planet that rules the decan is what's expressed on the card. And so in that sense, even though some of the combinations are less happy than others, all of those planets are ruling something. It's the least important level of ruling for some of them, but it's ruling something. So there is still a and that's why I think that's one of the fascinating things about studying astrology with tarot, is that every single one of those minor arcana pip cards, with separating out the aces and just having the 36 that match the decans, every one is expressing a form of rulership. And the form of rulership that is rulership by face or rulership by decan is the idea of being, each form of rulership is given a metaphor. Rulership by face is a metaphor of being in a foreign place without any friends or anybody to help you, any resources, but being able to successfully kind of make your way on your own. And so some of the cards also have additional rulership by whether it's a tradition, just like domicile rulership or exaltation or something. Some will have be in fall or detriment, but all of them are going to rule that face. And so sometimes they have extra degree of support, sometimes they have more challenges and additionally, but because they rule by face, they always are able to make it on their own. And I think that's one of the really cool ways of looking at the pip cards. Everybody's like,
Yeah. Like I'll do it. It's like okay, I'm a Scorpio, and so my decan is like the 6 of Cups, I guess, or something like that. And I'm just like, and then also then there's there's the court card of my also, and this all related back when you were talking about like timing of the cards. I guess we saw that wheel a few lessons back, a few meetups back. So I have the Prince of Cups and then the six of Cups, and it's like, that's interesting. I don't know how to put them together. And then I look at my chart, and it's another way to look at me being a Scorpio in a different way. And I got it's like, okay, yeah, this does get deep pretty quick.
Yeah. Well, remember one of the main premises is that using a holistic approach, we're trying not to break it down. I know you're an engineer, but we're trying not to break it down. We're trying to create a little family because our son is in Cancer today, and so this class is a Cancer class. So we're trying to create a little family, and our planets are all our family. And yes, there's a part of you that has the Scorpio qualities, but there's other parts of you that have different qualities. And so just like saying, Scorpio is a very important part of you, but how does it interact with everything else? That's what's going to really open things up for you and make it not just like Scorpio itself is complicated, but you'll start to see how it interacts with those other planets, with the other points, via aspects, via sun, moon, ascendant, via ascendant ruling planet and midheaven, all those different ways of organizing the information. They give you the foundation.
So when I'm looking at my chart, right? So we're looking at that quarter that goes from ascendant to midheaven. Is there anything about the planets that are sort of along the way or in that transition that count in that?
Yeah, I mean, I do. That is part of the 8-week class, is that we take those polarities, the up and down and left and right, and we do divide it into the quadrants then and look at that. The way to think of it is it's both waxing and day. And so the whole idea of the waxing and coming into power or coming into being, plus being visible and seen, those things in that one quadrant will definitely be really coming into the height of their power, and like not a long way to go, like almost there.
Okay. Interesting.
So if somebody has like kind of a lopsided chart where all of the planets are on the ascendant side, which is, I guess, if you're looking at it,
on the left
side.
Yeah.
Yeah. What does that mean as far as their like general?
Well, generally it means that all of them, that as a general rule, everything's coming into being. They're trying to grow, they're trying to evolve, they're trying to rise up, they're trying to either they're seen and trying to get to the height of their power, or they're unseen and working really hard to rise. If likewise, on the other hand, people that have a lot of things on the right hand side, we're gonna find that there is a sense of always trying to transition out of things. I have 7 planets on the left, and for instance, when I was young and I thought I always need to know more and learn more and do more, and I'm not working hard enough, that made sense. But I'm like 52 now, and I still think all those things. And it's like I'm still always trying to come into being. Somebody that had all the rest of that, they might always be trying, especially if it's heavy. If it's evenly split, that's more just kind of natural cycles. But if it's heavy on the right-hand side, those people are probably always trying to get out of situations, always trying to release so that they can find something new, always trying to always feeling like they've finished something and they're ready to let it go.
Interesting.
Thanks everybody for participating and being part of the group. And I will let you all go. Have a good lunch. And I will see you all later.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye.